And welcome back to Major Dragon Comic Review, coming to you live from Seattle, Washington. As always, I'm your host for the evening, Daniel Doc Gentry. With me are my gurus, Woody and Alex. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hi, Doc.
I am joining you from my new desk, or new old desk.
I noticed there's actually stuff on the wall. I did that too. I
Mm,
got stuff on my
yeah.
wall.
One of those things is the hand solo that I did, and another one is the which you can't see as reflection is the R2D2 that Alex did. Alex is waving to his
He's like,
R2D2.
yeah, hi. But anyways, we are jumping in again with the Umbrella Academy, and we are not talking about the Netflix show, but everybody should check that out. It was really good. I've been through it the entire season, so I
Yeah.
highly recommend it. But we are going to be doing the the Umbrella Academy Dallas segment tonight,
The
and
second graphic novel.
you guys may see the old pictures that I'm putting up, and that's because I read them all, and I decided I wasn't gonna separate pictures
Yeah.
as we go. So, what do you got for background on this one, Woody?
Well, the Umbrella Academy, Dallas picks up pretty much where the first graphic novel left off, and I thought it was interesting as I was reading through it. Oh, like when there were elements that they did that seemed like throwaway scenes, like with the temps, that just didn't really go anywhere, that were resolved in Dallas, and they did the same thing in Dallas for the third graphic novel. And kind of briefly getting back to the show, getting a chance to reread all the books now. It's interesting how with the show, they basically just took the first two graphic novels and remixed it, which makes me curious where it's going to go. But it, as implied by the title, it basically the plot deals with the character of Number Five and his original mission to assassinate a president, and how that becomes embroiled in the comic book series. There is a lot of reveals about what was like the mysteries of the first graphic novel. A lot of them are answered in this one for the most part. Fun read, and again, the Umbrella Academy is basically how messed up can the X-Men be?
I would never ever put them up against X-Men because they're better than X-Men already. So
Well, the way the X-Men are now, yes.
that's what I'm comparing them to.
20 years ago, no, the X-Men would hand them their butts. But it certainly is a much more fun story, I think, because there's actual stakes involved, and like the characters are more real, more plausibly created, and you don't necessarily know that they're going to survive. It's a lot more fun than something so commercial as what Marvel and DC do.
So, Alex, what do you think about these?
Um, once again, I gotta say, it's like art-wise, I definitely do love this. As a story, uh, I thought it was definitely interesting. Not to go into major spoilers, but there's an interesting part of like time travel that goes in because of one of the characters, and I felt like it was a pretty good read for the 5 books. Can't really think of anything that's really stood out more than just like how I enjoyed the art and
I mean, like a giant Martian ape getting to punch out a Korean mom. I mean, come on, that's worth the price of admission.
yeah, I've been on the internet. I've seen weirder stuff.
Yeah.
What's your take over this whole story, though, Woody?
Which whole story am I taking
This
over?
one, the Dallas story.
Do you want me to just recap the whole thing?
Okay. So, anyways, I'll jump in. So,
Okay.
we talked a little bit about the art, and the art in all of these is actually unique. It crosses over what I would consider to be like old style comic drawing into more realistic setting stuff, and it mixes these things within. I always love that because anytime that you leave gaps for my imagination would fill it in. And I think that most people who read comic books, enjoying them nostalgically, I should say, have kind of the same sense where they don't need everything put in front of them. They need to have gaps enough for them to enjoy it. And I think that's what keeps me coming back to this. Even rereading the old stories wasn't such a. It's not. What am I trying to say? It doesn't feel like a job to get back into it. It's not like I have to push myself through it. It's super interesting and a lot of fun. the storyline, I don't think you need to realize that they do these little crossover things for this to enjoy the story, because there's a lot of stuff in there that I don't think they'll ever explain, and it's just conversations between siblings. And sometimes it's just sarcastic, it's hurtful, it's out there. There's little scenes in there where they go through it, and I love that about this. It really feels like not an adoptive family, but a real family, people that have lived together for years, having a good time. It is funny to me that they would take it back to that after the first graphic novel, or the first set of series, or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Only because the most unique character to me is number 7. And please read them and understand why I have such a love for this character. It is a beautiful thing that I'm not saying it was surprising at the end to find out about the powers that 7 had. I like how the comic book did it, because they kept bringing her back as the character who didn't have anything, and in that made you think that they were just this little push to have this more reality check, this normal person involved with it, and they follow through in this as well with their character developments. I hope everybody kind of understands where I'm going with that.
I do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty much the same thing that they did in the TV show, though they leaned on it a little harder.
And if you give me a second, I'm wondering why. Huh. If you're not... There might not be sound for this. I'm just going to warn you.
Well, as long as we're recording it.
I did an update. I'm not seeing sound being recorded for it.
Oh.
Okay, well, I should be on my end.
Okay,
so
more importantly,
for the
I
people
have
behind
sound,
the screen.
I have sound being recorded. I just want to let you guys know. So if somebody does pop up on Twitch and you just see me doing this, I hope they write something and say, "Hey, there's no sound."
Well, when we get this onto YouTube, if anything, since I record and since you record, Doc, there will be some kind of mishmash of audio, visuals, and duct tape put together.
One thing I wanted to comment on is I also do like the presentation of how their superhero world is, because it's not like so again, kind of like, look at Marvel, DC. The superhero aspect is very ingrained into society. It's not silly. It's very normalized, and in their world they do have superheroes, but it's not exactly normalized. Very, very strange, and they definitely lean on the stranger aspect of it, which I like. But it was interesting that when the TV show was put together, it was entirely on the drama of the family, and there was no allusion in any way to the superhero world, and like there's no supervillains that were ever presented, but yet there must be, and I kind of missed that in the show. It's one of the, like, rereading it and then moving on again to like check out the third graphic novel, which is coming out right now. It's like the way the superhero world is presented and just the strangeness of it is absolutely charming, and I kind of would almost want to run a superhero game set in a setting like that, where the superhero aspect is completely bizarre as opposed to the normalization of it that you're used to from mainstream comics.
And that's an interesting thought of like, do you think actually a setting like this could be done well within a role-playing game engine like D&D or the Palladium system or the D6 system or White Wolf or whatever?
I think it could. The problem with that you run into, that because most superhero games are based entirely on Marvel and DC as their inspiration, they are in a normalized fashion. And like in the comics, we have some plans for some superhero stuff coming up. Like I've got one that we're working on right now, which is the first issue of it, and it is strange and bizarre and not normalized in any way. And like if it would be interesting to take that setting and turn that into a into a comic or into an RPG at some point.
Well, what do you mean by strange and bizarre?
Like, I mean, we got, I guess, saying the title probably wouldn't hurt anything, being, the gutter world, but like it comes from, like, I don't
very
want,
meta.
yeah, I don't want to explain it too much here. Like you could do a superhero. I know, right? Well, the first issue is coming out, but even the superhero world that's presented in the first issue could easily be, like, it definitely is in a similar vein as Umbrella Academy. I think it could work. Like they have there's a character in the third graphic novel who's just this little Japanese guy, and who's like a super scientist character who helps out two of the heroes. But he basically said that Space Boy's gorilla body would be completely admired by Japanese people, and it's like that's a bit of a departure,
So
like
you guys are missing something. Listen, anything that you can think of can be done on Fate Core. I'm not pushing them. They're not paying me. I fell in love with Evil Hat and how they do things. The setup, you could do anything with this system that your little heart desires. And if you're stuck, they actually make a book for superheroes so that you can introduce it into a setting. When it comes to that kind of stuff, you don't. I hate when people want to D20 a system like that. You need to have flexibility. In this world, these guys don't know the limits of their power. So since they don't, you need a system that doesn't have limits set on it. And a D20 or even a 6D6 or whatever system that you want to use has limits put on it. And there's not a lot of flexibility when it comes to this. I don't see this comic book as a D&D Pathfinder thing. There's too many restrictive rules for that kind of stuff. This is definitely... I would even see this not even just Fate Core, even though I think it would work great in Fate Core, but a level-less system where you buy in defeats would be great for this. I think trying to put this is one of the misunderstandings with it. Rat Queens is a great D&D Pathfinder one. Many people have done a bunch of them. Even Saga would be a great one because everything, a laser only shoots so far, a sword only swings so hard. In this, though, when you're talking about powers that people don't understand, and like, I think it touches in the Dallas series. If it doesn't, it touches in the first one, which we did episode 31. That wasn't that long ago. With number 5's ability, it deals in probability quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
This is not a made-up thing, by the way, people. Probability quantum mathematics actually exists. But what I'm trying to say is because the bounds aren't limited, you would need to find a system that doesn't limit that.
One thing that I've done in the past with great success when you're dealing with that sort of area of, like, you introduce players to a game world, but if you don't let them actually read the materials on what they can do, they basically know enough to make their character and they jump in and they just start figuring it out. You actually have a lot of fun with the players discovering their powers through experimentation. And we've done that with games, Alex and I, in the past, and it's worked really well. And it certainly could work well in the superhero game if you wanted to handle it in that vein.
So, but I see what you're saying. It really is kind of cool and a great thought, Alex. But each system has its limits. It has its methods. It has its pros. It has its cons. And when you're trying to develop a game to play with people, sorry, I'm taking up a little bit more time. It's not comic book related. You need to think about all of them. Just because you've been playing D&D for 30 years doesn't mean you can play any game or make up a game and make it feel like what you read in a comic book. And we're talking about the Umbrella Academy because D&D is rule restricted and it wouldn't feel like the Umbrella Academy to you is what I'm trying to say.
I think the biggest challenge...
I got 2 points.
Okay,
one, Doc, I'm going to argue with you and say that you're wrong.
Yeah, bring it on.
Because so many people that we have come across, and the three of us are a perfect example of, like, our involvement with comic books, either being like writer, somebody that does art, and somebody that reads. We also have like a level of interest in role-playing, tabletop games. And so many people from the community that we've talked to have used inspiration of role-playing to basically craft the art of comics. So it is kind of relevant. But the second part that I do want to say is role playing is a very unique experience in comparison to any other type of game or visual or written material, in the respects of you got something that is one part storytelling, a narrative part of like writing a book or making a visual part that could be a comic book. And then the second part that comes in is, because it is a game, you need an engine, a mechanics, basically says, yes, this is fair when you do this with either dice, Jenga pieces, Legos, whatever, or no, this does not work because either the setting, the aspects of the story would either break apart and get completely scattered to the four winds because you do this, now this would break what is capable within a game. But there's that fine level between the mature level of, one, the responsibility of the storyteller and the people that are part of the story to come to this agreement of saying that my character can do X, Y, and Z, but at the same time, here's the limitations or the things that make it interesting as a character. So that way it isn't like the many stories of Superman when he first started, he had not only heat vision, he had great jump, he had the ability to make like micro
shape-shifting in space by doing this.
Yeah, shape-shifting, hypnotic vision, micro little Supermans that came out of him,
rainbow
sneezes
fingers
that would blow away galaxies. But the point is, does that make it for like somebody that's playing Jimmy Olsen as a character and Lois Lane? You know, it's like in a role-playing situation, Superman's an NPC for the most part, and like Lex Luthor, Lois Lane, and those other individuals are the PCs.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're agreeing more than you think we're arguing.
Okay, so
I just wanted to get my ramble off.
No, but I agree.
So the part to jump in was in the terms of RPGing Umbrella Academy, like usually when you deal with a superhero game, they've got like, okay, aliens, your mutants, your cyborgs, like that kind of stuff. But the characters in the Umbrella Academy are just completely like off the wall bizarre, because you have a guy who is, his head is attached to a giant Martian gorilla, and he uses a jetpack and a ray gun, and he's still pretty strong, but maybe not as much as he used to. You got a guy with psychic powers who can only when his feet are off, like shoes are off, right? And you just then you've got the rumor who can make anything happen if she says it will. It's like like these, and then you got a guy who like shoots tentacles out of his chest. I mean that come from somewhere. So it's like the selection of abilities and the characters are so freaking strange that to create a game engine that could accommodate these sorts of options with, like, let's say a random roll chart or something, that would be a bit of a project, and it would be awesome. but
I think this kind of goes into like, as if I was to do within Dungeons and Dragons, like I would say basically, here's this area within my hands where this illumination starts up, and this burst of a phoenix comes out of my hands, opposed to fireball.
No,
more interesting.
But I think where Woody and I are talking about rule sets and making a game like this happen, you're talking about role playing the events that are happening. And those are, again, both of those are very valid. That's more knowing the players than anything, is having that ability to be able to, describe your spell, or, talk about the emotions of the person right before something
getting
happens.
into the headspace of not only my character is very themed, like if I'm a fire-based character, what stands me different from like just a normal spellcaster,
right?
Or somebody that's just a fire mage, like my specialty is the phoenix.
Yeah,
or something of that nature.
these two things that we're talking about, though, these relate together, and it's great in gaming. But we kind of got off when we were talking about the story, and I just want to jump back into that because I love how these stories match each other. Where what he talked about earlier, the little things that you're missing out on, it's not all of them, by the way. So every time something doesn't make sense, don't assume it's in the next set of comics. But there are little things you're like, why did they put that in the comic? It makes zero sense. And then you go to the next set, and it kind of feeds into that, like the Dallas with the assassination of JFK. These things are incredible, wonderfully done, by the way, with the storytelling, and it takes a lot of thought process to make something like that happen. I also enjoy that they don't give you too much information. This person, and I can't remember the writer, but they definitely know the right limit to give information. And I don't know if you guys understand that. You know, when you read comic books and they feel like they have to explain every little detail to you about what you're
Stanley
reading.
method.
Well, no,
Yes.
I get what you're saying. Kind of. I mean, like, if a building is broken in the background, I've read them. I haven't found any mainstream ones, but I have read these comics where it like explains what happened to that building, even though it has nothing to do with the story, kind of thing. This one will be like, oh yeah, I remember when that came down, and then it'll move on, and they won't explain it, and then you'll see that in the next set of comic books. I think that's awesome writing. This is one of my favorite stories of all times, The Umbrella Academy. And I'm a fan of only a few comic books. This one's story is awesome. I agree the art is cool. And like I said, the art, I like the art because it gives you some detail, a lot of detail up front, not a lot of detail in the back, and it lets your imagination run. But I just want to take it one step further, which is our third matrix that we usually talk about is the lettering. Whoever's doing this, I love you because it feels different from page to page. It feels different from panel to panel, even in this when I'm reading it. And I still do not lose track of who's saying what.
I'm pretty sure the letterer who did this used to read the Ninja Turtles because the style of how the word balloons are done is very similar to how the Ninja Turtles were presented in the early days, where they, instead of a balloon, they've got like kind of they just draw straight lines around it, and it has this really interesting, like it definitely says I'm an indie book as opposed to a mainstream, like, comic, and it's things you don't notice at first, which means it's being done right, but then you see it, and it's like, oh, this is so cool, how interesting,
But,
and whoever's doing the lettering is freaking consistent.
yes.
Oh my goodness, very consistent.
But
wow.
not so consistent that each panel feels like they were just done through some computerized program that just dropped it in. It's unique. It's hard for me to explain it because I don't really understand it myself. But I don't. It's not like reading a book. I don't mind those comics that left to right, up to down, or when we do manga, right to left, up to down, whatever. But it's more unique where even if it was out of order, I would. I don't think I would be confused on who to read next. You know what I mean? To make the story flow. And I love that.
Sure.
And it's so unique in this because I can't think of another comic book I've read that feels that way to me. But anyways, that is what it is. You guys want to do some final thoughts on this, and then we can get off air and argue RPGs?
Well, Umbrella Academy is one fun book, man, and I'm now moving on to the third graphic novel, which I think is I'm getting caught up on it now because I finally get a chance to get back and read some books I've been getting lazy about, and I think they have the last issue out, but it's so far it's like little things that they, as we talked about, like set up in the second graphic novel are being in the third one, and I hope they don't wait so long for number 4. Then if the show's successful, then maybe they won't. But yeah, it's man, I'm loving the series. This is like the best superhero book ever. 5 out of 5, man.
Alex, what do you think?
I think it's an interesting tale of a very unique family that comes together because of obviously their powers. But as the series goes, it's got some great art, great story, and obviously it's got picked up by Netflix, so they definitely did something right. So definitely check it out for yourself and enjoy.
And I gotta say, man, the writing of this is unique. it feels like you know it because there's so much almost nostalgic drawing with it, but it's unique in its own thing. I love that this comic because it does that to me. It feels new, but it's the old thing. It's hard to describe. It takes you through this amazing thing. Art wise is awesome. Like I said, lettering, I like it. I agree that it's consistent, but it doesn't feel computerized. It doesn't feel like there's some kind of algorithm to it. It's just done beautifully, and the story is so unique. I cannot think of another story that does it. And like I said, little things that might show up later in the story, they'll pretend like it doesn't mean where they're going to take it, and they're great at that. There's no tell in the story itself for that. As an example, number 7 having powers in the first set that we did, where I bought into that she did have powers. I bought into that wholeheartedly until the white violin.
It's funny because there's no reason for her not to.
Right, and that's what I loved about it. This is a great story. I haven't picked them up to. I don't know if this will be one that I'll collect, but I'm pretty sure it will be. I know me, but I haven't got to that part yet because this, and it's not because I don't want to know what happens next. I think it's great for avid comic book readers because you don't it doesn't have that anxiety like you have to read the next one to feel like you got anything out of the story that you just read. And that's amazing to me as well, where it's so well done that yes, you want to read the next one, but it's not a priority to move forward, if you understand what I'm trying to say with that one.
You know, Doc, the artist frequently shows up at Emerald City Comic Con.
Well, they swing by, I'll say hi.
Yeah. You'll have to find him.
Speaking of which, why don't you guys we got 3 minutes left, throw out some plugs.
Hey, miniaturedragon.com. We relaunched a new website. Everything's under construction, but you can go in, see our new comic, Insulin Shock. That's being the in-between while we get ready for issue 5 of Cyber Symbiosis. And we also have launched some RPG content for Cyber Symbiosis, so there's still new stuff coming out.
What do you want to...
Also, we're at booth 1812 in Emerald City Comic Con, so definitely check us out. Mm-hmm. And bye.
Yeah, and it'll be one of the few times we have the entire creative team for the comic together in one place.
When is Claire coming back here? I miss her.
She will be here for Emerald City.
But I mean, on the show all the time. I want to pull out that.
We can definitely
box.
talk to her then.
Yeah, she took a side job so she could have resources for Emerald City Comic Con. Funny thing, I was looking at her list. It's like she's like, send me this list, and I'm bringing all this stuff. It's like that's enough for one day. You're gonna need more stuff. Jeez. I'm afraid I won't have enough things. Like I've got a pile of books, like cases of books, but like I don't think I was able to get enough. The snow really burned me.
Hey, you guys really need to come check out their booth. I know I'm going to help them out this year, but more importantly, I've seen what they do, and it's unique. It's not just the comic books plural that they do, and they don't have just that, even though they have that and they're willing to sign those. But there's so much more to this booth. It's incredible. Everybody expressing their art. My favorite thing from what did we just do in Tacoma?
Oh, Jet City.
Yes.
Yeah, Jet City was the buttons that you were doing, Alex. That was my
favorite.
Oh,
yeah.
People were coming by requesting Alex to make art to make a button because they have a button machine. And it was cool. It was really neat to see that because I walked around the whole place and I saw everybody has their own one specific thing that they were doing. You guys have this plethora of art that was pouring out, and it was really unique, and it really is a good time. Come show these guys some love. You don't even have to pick up anything. We appreciate it if you do, but come on by and meet them and see what they're doing. I mean, some of the art is blown away. So much so that I have a signed piece of art that Woody did. I'll let you explain it, Woody.
Oh, right. Well, because I did a portrait of Flash Gordon, and he loved it so much he wanted the original. Thank you, Shannon, who's hiding from now. But she got him to sign it. He had her bring me over so he could trade for the original. But yeah, Doc got to walk away with one of his signed prints.
Yeah, it's incredible. And if you don't believe come see for yourself about the art that these guys do. Just not just in their comic book, but other things that they do. But that's
one thing. We also will have 3D art prints of the show.
So I haven't seen that yet, but everybody, come by the booth
awesome.
and check it out. I believe it'll be awesome. You guys were talking about that 3D. But anyways, read more comics, keep it nerdy, and live your dreams.